Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our 12th build on the channel, a build I am entitling the Stone Singer. Now, this is going to be a Bladesinger build, but there's going to be a little twist in particular with our race, which will provide some cool flavor, as well as making this a very powerful and very fun, well-rounded wizard character. Now, here's our agenda for today. I will kind of introduce the build and talk about what the concept is. I'll talk about level 1, levels 2 through 6, 7 through 9, 10 through 13, and 14 17 before summarizing. And each of kind of our key thresholds, that's going to be level 6, level 9, level 13, and level 17. I'm going to do a tactics report and kind of talk about what this character is capable of at that level, kind of the damage output they can do, and that kind of thing. So let's get started. Introduction and build concept. So what is this build? The main thing with this build is we're going to be a well-rounded, pure Bladesinger Wizard. And I know most of my builds, and matter of fact, all of them up to this point, have been multi-class builds with at least one level in another class besides the main one. Now, in this build in particular, I wanted to actually make a pure class character, and that is because with this class in particular, I believe that they're actually going to be at their most powerful when they are going to be a pure class wizard. Now, that doesn't mean that multi-classing is bad, but for this particular character, this subclass is so powerful, and wizard overall is so powerful that you don't really need to multi-class. This build in particular will combine multiple defensive features and spells to compensate for our relatively small hit points, because as a wizard we only have a d6 hit dice, and so our hit point gain per level is only 4 plus our constitution, so that's not going to be super great. Another thing this build is going to be able to do is output damage and or control as needed. One of the things that this build is going to feature is we're going to be very flexible in terms of what we're going to be doing, and with the spell selections I'm going to make, we're going to be able to bring damage or control as needed. Now, importantly here, I believe that if you want to make the best overall Bladesinger, you should actually be a wizard first and not a melee character first, even though that's something that they're capable of. That doesn't mean that you'll make a bad character if you go with a melee primary Bladesinger, but this character is still going to melee, but it's not going to be what I'm going to be building around the most. Now, for this build, you'll need the player's handbook, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and Monsters of the Multiverse for the racial selection I'm going to take. If you want to use a different race and just kind of use this as inspiration, absolutely a good idea, and Bladesingers will be very powerful regardless of what racial choice you make. So, at level 1, we are starting with Wizard, and this build will be a Wizard all the way. Now, as a first level wizard, we don't get proficiency with any armor. We get proficiency with daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaves, and light crossbows. We also get the arcane recovery feature, and this says that once per long rest, when we finish a short rest, we can recover a number of spell slots equal to half our wizard level rounded up, and none of the spells can be higher than 6th level. This is a great feature that all wizards get. That just helps you have more spells, because casting spells is really what a wizard is all about. Of course, we also get the wizard's spell casting, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a bit, and we get proficiency in intelligence saves and wisdom saves. This will kind of make us somewhat resilient to a lot of the powerful mental or fear type spells in the game, but there is another save that we will want later. Now, for our race, I'm going to be using an Earth Gensei out of the Monsters of the Multiverse book. And this race is basically you are a humanoid whose line has been impacted by some kind of elemental. So in our case, we're going with the Earth variety. And as an Earth Gensei, we are a medium humanoid with 30-foot speed, which is pretty standard. We have dark vision out to a range of 60 feet, which again is standard for a lot of races. We have the Earth Walk feature, so as long as we're walking on the floor, whether it's on the ground or on a floor, we can ignore difficult terrain. And this is a pretty nice feature, and can come in handy, in a lot of circumstances. Most importantly, we get the Merge with Stone feature. And what this does is we know the Blade Ward cantrip, and a number of times per long rest equal to our proficiency bonus, we can cast it as a bonus action. This gives us a flexible way to get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and is one of our key defensive features. At character level 5, we also learned the Pass Without Trace spell and can cast it once per long rest without expending a spell slot. But we can also cast it with any spell slots we might already have. We also get to pick our spell casting ability for both of these spells. At character creation, we're going to pick intelligence because we are a wizard, but none of their spells actually require anything that has to do with your spell casting modifier. Now, as for our stats, we're doing the point buy method as always, and I am buying a 15 in dexterity and putting our racial +1 there, a 13 constitution, a 15 intelligence and putting our racial +2 there, a 12 wisdom, and then we're dumping strength and charisma. Because we are a wizard, we'll be starting with 6 plus our constitution modifier and hit points for a total of 7. Now, let's talk a little bit more about spells. Well, first, starting equipment. So on this particular build, I would do the gold buy method for your equipment, and wizards on average get 100 gold. So here's what I would get. I would get a spell book. I would get a crystal for our arcane focus, spellcasting focus, and I would get a pair of short swords. Now, we are not able to use these just yet. And if you want to do a little bit more damage, I would take a rapier. But I like the flexibility of being able to dual wield, and as a Bladesinger, we're only going to get proficiency with one weapon of our choice, so I would stick with whatever you want to pick, whether it's a short sword, a rapier, or a scimitar. Now, as for our spell casting, rituals are wizards are a little bit unique, and they get a unique ritual casting in that you don't have to prepare the spells to be able to ritual cast them, so long as they're in your spell book, which is something that's unique to wizards and is pretty powerful. As a first level wizard, we get 3 cantrips of our choice, and we know Blade Ward because we're an Earth Sensei. So the cantrips I want here are Booming Blade, Ray of Frost, and Mind Sliver, in addition to our Blade Ward. Booming Blade is going to be our go-to melee cantrip, and then Ray of Frost is a good ranged cantrip that also has some utility in the slow, and then Mind Sliver is a very powerful ranged cantrip in that it doesn't do much damage, but it debuffs the enemy and makes it easier for them to fail their next saving throw. And we are going to plan on using this to help with our control aspect when necessary. Now, the first level wizard, we also get to have 4 spells in our spell book. Well, we could prepare 4 and have a total of 6. The 6 I would pick here at first level are Absorb Elements, Find Familiar, Mage Armor, Shield, Sleep, and Ice Knife. Absorb Elements and Shield are kind of your main low-level defensive suite. And so it is important to note, I would take Silvery Barbs, probably instead of Sleep, maybe even instead of Ice Knife at this level if the spell was allowed in your game. It is very powerful. It is out of the Strixhaven book, but not all campaigns will allow this. And for the sake of this video, I'm assuming that it's not allowed, but if it is allowed, you should get it here. Find Familiar is a ritual, so you should probably not prepare this spell. But what this lets you do is summon a familiar that you can use potentially to scout or give you advantage on one of your attacks and that kind of thing. Familiar can help action. We're going to be using Mage Armor, especially at the beginning here, to give us an armor class. This will give us a base armor class of 16 at this level. Sleep at low levels can potentially end encounters all on its own, and so this is something we want to have in our arsenal, although I don't imagine you will prepare it much at later levels. And Ice Knife is just a good bit of single target and area damage combined, and it's a pretty solid first level spell. Now, at level 2, we are of course continuing in Wizard, and we get our Arcane Tradition, our subclass, and we're going to go with Blade Singing. So, Blade Singers get training in War and Song, and this gives us proficiency with light armor and a simple or martial weapon of our choice, and I'm going to pick the short sword here. Now, you should seek to get armor as soon as you can, because it'll save you 1 spell slot per day, so you don't have to cast Mage Armor. But I wouldn't start wearing this armor until it can at least match the armor class of Mage Armor, so you'll need Magical Leather or better, with a minimum base AC of 15. We also get proficiency in the performance skill here, and so I would make sure for your background not to have this skill, so you can get it here from your class. And we also get the Blade Song, which is the core thing that Blade Singers get. So a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest, we can activate the Blade Song as a bonus action for 1 minute. And it has a lot of powerful effects. So we get to add our intelligence modifier to our armor class. So at this level with mage armor, we would have an armor class of 19 with our Blade Song going, 13 from mage armor, plus 3 from dexterity, plus 3 from intelligence. Our base walking speed also increases by 10 feet, which is great because we're probably going to be wanting to melee at some point. We also get advantage on acrobatics checks. So this can potentially help us escape grapples or avoid taking damage when we fall and that kind of thing. And we also get a bonus to Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration equal to our Wisdom modifier. Intelligence modifier. So we would now have +4 to our saves to maintain concentration. So the fact that this feature gives us armor class and a bonus to our concentration saves means it's very powerful, and we want to have this going all the time in combat if we can. In terms of our spells, we now have 3 first level spell slots, and we get to add a couple more spells to our book. Every level, we get to add 2. It's a really important note here that while the spells I'm listing are the ones I would like to have, you'll absolutely be able to acquire more spells, whether you find scrolls or purchase them and that kind of thing, and you should absolutely be doing this as your wizard, and so your spell list should include much more than this, but just the spells I list. So we get to add 2 more spells at first level to our book here. I would take Disguise Self and Detect Magic. These are, again, more of utility things. Disguise Self could be used for concentration outside of combat, and Detect Magic is a lot of utility, again, in the Rec campaign. The spells that you should pick should be based on how you're feeling at your current table and kind of where your campaign is going. And so the ones I'm picking are ones that I like, but if I was playing a character like this in a real campaign, I would expect I might make different choices, and you probably would too. Now, at level 3, our Arcane Recovery has bumped up to 2 levels of spell slots, and we now are a 2nd level caster in terms of, well, we can now have 2nd level spells. So we have 2 2nd level slots, 4 first level slots, and we get to add another couple spells to our book. And I would add Misty Step as a bonus action teleport. This is a great mobility and get out of jail free card. And then I would also add the Web spell here. Web is a very powerful control tool. You can lock enemies down in it, keep them from moving, and this is going to be one of our go-to control spells here at low levels. Importantly, it's also only a 2nd level spell slot, and if you're out of higher levels or want to save them for more powerful things, the spell is very effective. Now, at level 4, we are a Wizard 4, and we get to learn another cantrip here. I would learn Minor Illusion, specifically because it can combo well with Disguise Self, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. And we get our first ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to take the Telekinetic feat here and use it to bump our Intelligence 18. This also gives us the Mage Hand cantrip, which is really nice. The main thing that we want here is this lets us use our bonus action to attempt to pull or push a creature 5 feet either away from us or towards us. And allies can only fail to save, and the save DC is based on our intelligence, so 8 plus our proficiency plus our intelligence modifier. And so we can use this on our turns to push enemies away from us if we want to run, or push enemies into our web. And overall, this is a very powerful and really nice thing to have as an at-will bonus action. We get to learn a couple more spells here, and the ones I would take are Enhance Ability, and this is again for out-of-combat purposes. You can give yourself or an ally advantage on all checks related to a certain attribute, and potentially in addition to other bonus effects. So you can use this to make your party's primary charisma character much better at their say their perception or their persuasion or their deception. You could enable your main survivalist to guide the party by giving them advantage on wisdom checks and that kind of thing. You could enable your main investigator, which might be you, to do better on investigation by giving them advantage on intelligence checks. And so overall, this is a very powerful out-of-combat tool that I really want to have in our arsenal. I'm also going to take the Tasha's Mind Whip spell. This is it does reasonable damage, but when you upcast it, you get to target 1 additional creature per spell slot you upcast it at. And this will enable us, it has a pretty powerful control effect attached to it. And so this will enable us to damage and potentially cripple large amounts of enemies without having to concentrate on a spell to do so. So you can combine this with other concentration spells to provide very powerful control. And it's a great thing to have in our arsenal, and we might as well get it. At level 5, we are a 5th level wizard, and we now have 3rd level spells and slots. Importantly, we get our racial spell here, Pass Without Trace, from our Blend with Stone feature. And so what this does, this is a super powerful spell. You can buff yourself and your party, and everybody gets a +10 to stealth checks, and you can't be tracked by non-magical means and that kind of thing. And this is a spell that wizards don't normally have access to. This is normally an exclusive ranger and druid spell. And we get to cast it once for free, and it's a 2nd level spell, so we can cast it with our slots. And this will just enable us to enable the whole party to be superb at infiltrating. And this is one of the main reasons I wanted to be an early gen set. Power of our cantrips also go up here, so all of them deal an additional damage dice. And we can now recover 3 levels of slots when we use our arcane recovery. We get a couple new spells here, and the ones I want Fireball for AoE blasting and Hypnotic Pattern for AoE control. And honestly, there are a lot of really good spells here, and there are more that I will mention, but things like Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Hypnotic Pattern, Slow, Counterspell, even Haste are all really good spells that I would love to have. And so, make sure you're on the lookout for those scrolls. Now, at level 6, we get our next wizard feature, and this is the extra attack out of Bladesinger. Now, importantly, this feature is better than normal extra attacks because, we can attack twice when we take the attack action on our turn, but we can replace one of these attacks with the casting of a cantrip. So this could be a Mind Sliver, or it could be a Booming Blade, which will deal more damage. And this just makes it really makes the Bladesinger feel like that kind of Gish spell sword character, because you can still cast spells and attack at the same time with the same action. We get a couple more spells in our book here, and I'm going to take Counterspell and Summon Fae. I like having a little bit of summoning options here, and we're going to be planning on using Summon Fae for our damage per round at this level. Now, we are level 6, so it is time for our first tactics report. So let's kind of talk about some of the things this character will do and is capable of. So our general strategy is going to be, in the first round, we're going to cast whatever we want our concentration spell to be with our action, and we'll start blade singing with our bonus action. In the second round and beyond, we'll either make attacks with our short sword, or we will cast spells as required, and we'll probably be shoving with telekinetic. Now, in terms of control, our main control spells at this point are Web or Hypnotic Pattern. In terms of damage per round, we are going to be using Summon Fae for our concentration. But we also have a lot of blasting options between Fireball, Tasha's Mind Whip, which comes with a control effect, as well as Ice Knife. Now, we also have a lot of infiltration tools here. We have the combination of Disguise Self plus Minor Illusion. So this is a really cool combo because, with Disguise Self, you can make yourself look like someone else. And one of the effects of Minor Illusion is you can replicate someone else's voice or potentially create a new one. And so you can use this if your character isn't good at making accents or that kind of thing. You can do them with this spell combination and potentially replace someone, or at least look and sound like them until someone investigates. We also have Pass Without Trace to give ourselves and the rest of the party a +10 to all our stealth rolls. We have a lot of general utility in Enhance Ability and our Find Familiar spell to Scout. Now, our damage per round spell, our plan is we're going to cast Summon Fae in the first round. We're going to choose the Fuming Fae, and we're going to start our Blade Song. Then the Fae gets to act, and they can attack. And in round 2 and beyond, we're going to be attacking with Booming Blade with the aid of our Familiar, and then make another attack. Our Fae will, attack after they teleport, which gives them advantage on their first attack. And we will probably shove our enemy with telekinetic to get distance and back away to make them chase us, so they take damage from Booming Blade. So what kind of are the numbers here? So with Booming Blade will have a +6 to hit with advantage thanks to our familiar helping us, and this will do 1d6 plus 3 slashing damage and a d8 of thunder damage. And then our second attack will do 1d6 plus 3 damage. Our Summon Fae will get to attack with a +7 because it uses our spellcasting modifier with advantage because it's fuming, and it does 2d6 plus 3 plus our proficient. Well, does 3 plus the level of the spell that you cast at. So it'll do 2d6 plus 6 damage. Then if the enemy moved to chase us, if they were successfully shoved away, take another 2d8 thunder damage. So, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonuses to their saves, we would be doing 37 damage per round. And against an enemy with an AC of 15 and +5 to their saves, it would be 29.6 damage per round. And these are honestly pretty decent numbers. And you have to, find this with the fact that this character is not built primarily for damage per round, but in situations where it's called for, you can absolutely go with the plan. All right, at level 7, we are, of course, it was 7. Our Arcane Recovery bumps up to 4 levels of slots, and we get a 4th level spell slot. 4th level spells are pretty powerful. Ones I would probably take here are Polymorph and Wall of Fire. We can use Polymorph as kind of an emergency heal. If someone is low, we can basically turn them into a beast. If they're, a member of our party, we could turn them into a beast of challenge rating 7 or lower, which, that could be like a T-Rex. And Wall of Fire is a potentially very powerful damage per round spell. We can cast it and then use our telekinetic to shove an enemy into it, and it's a great thing to have. It's pretty effective at area denial. At level 8, we are an 8th level wizard, and we get our next ability score increase or feat. And I'm going to take Resilient Constitution, bumping our Constitution to 14. This gives us proficiency in Constitution saving throws, which is important not only for our concentration, but also there's a lot of enemy effects that target Constitution as a save. So now, while we are blade singing, we will have a +9 to our Constitution saves, which means that unless we roll a natural 1, we will always succeed at DC 10 checks to maintain our concentration, which is fantastic. We also get a couple more spells in our book. I would take Ralathim's Psychic Lance. This is out of the Fizban's Treasury of Dragons book. I know I didn't mention that in the intro, but it's, again, a very powerful spell that does pretty good damage, but also comes with a control effect. If the target fails their save against it, they're incapacitated, which can be pretty darn powerful. I would also take Fly here as a utility spell to enable either us to fly or more creatures to fly if we cast this spell. And having flight is going to be really nice. Again, look for more spells beyond the ones that you just get from your level ups and transcribe them into your book. At level 9, we're a 9th level wizard, and we now get 5th level spells. And the ones I'm going to take here are Animate Objects and Wall of Force. Wall of Force is a super powerful control spell, and is a great thing to have. And Animate Objects is going to be our go-to damage per round spell for the rest of our career in most circumstances. And our Arcane Recovery here is, of course, 5 levels of slots. And while we are capped on, we now have the highest level of slots we can recover with Arcane Recovery, it'll actually still improve from here, so we'll be able to recover more spells on that short rest when we actually get spells back. Now, at level 9, it is time for our next tactics report. And what has changed since last level? Well, the last time we checked at level 6. We have gained 4th and 5th level spell slots, as well as spells. And we've gained Polymorph, Ralathim's Psychic Lance, Animate Objects, Wall of Fire, and Wall of Force, in addition to any other spells you might have gotten during your adventures. Bumped our Constitution to 14, which was a pretty significant health boost, and also gotten proficiency in that save. So, our general plan is still the same. We're going to cast whatever concentration spell we're going to be using and start our Blade Song in the first round. And then after that, we're going to make melee attacks or cast spells as needed and shove with telekinetic with our bonus action, likely. Our damage per round plan, what we're going to do is we're going to cast Animate Objects and animate 10 tiny objects and start our Blade Song. So what you're going to want to do here, if there aren't objects around, you could potentially throw out a handful of coins and animate those. So I don't think that'll be an issue in terms of finding things to animate with your spell in particular. And round 2 and beyond, we will attack with our Booming Blade with our Familiar's Aid for that cantrip attack and make our second attack And then we will use our bonus action to command our animated objects or telekinetic shove. Now, the animated object spell is a lot like some of the other Player's Handbook summon spells in that you should be able to give your animated objects a general command if you don't issue direct control. So we probably won't have to use the bonus action every round to control them, but this will depend on your table. So talk to your DM about it. And if you're not able to shove with telekinetic, it's not a big deal. And I did not factor the extra damage from blade moves into our damage calculations because of. So here are our numbers at this level. Our booming blade and offhand attacks, well, and our secondary attacks haven't really improved in terms of their damage, but they have gotten a higher hit chance because our proficiency has gone up. But our 10 animated small objects, be they, well, tiny objects, be they coins or rocks or daggers or whatever, have a +8 to hit and do 1d4 plus 4 damage. And if the enemy does move with booming blade, it is still 2d8, but I have not factored that damage into our calculations. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 80.7 damage per round. And against an enemy with an AC of 16 and +6 to their saves, it would be 58.1. And since last time, this is an increase of over 100% against the lower armor class and almost 100% against the higher armor class. We have almost doubled our damage here. And this is pretty fantastic. Now, importantly, there are some stipulations with animated objects. The damage that they deal is not magical. So if you have enemies that are resistant to non-magical damage, they're not going to work as well. So you might want to use a Summon Fae, or we're going to pick up some more spells later on that can help against this. But this is still really good and quite good for this level. And we are, even though we're not focused on damage per round, just because we're a wizard and wizards have so many good spells, we're actually pretty darn good at it. All right, at level 10, we are a 10th level wizard, and we get our next feature from our subclass, and that is Song of Defense. So while our Blade Song is active, we can use our reaction when we take damage, and we can spend a spell slot. And if we do, we reduce that damage by an amount equal to 5 times the spell slot's level. And while this is something I don't see us using all the time, situationally, it can be really good. In terms of our defenses, our armor class is going to be pretty darn good at this level. With mage armor, it's going to be base 20, and we can potentially boost it to 25 with the shield spell. Against spells, we have reasonable saves against those, and we can counterspell the most dangerous ones. So what I would plan on doing with this feature is if there was a big hit that we couldn't counterspell, we couldn't absorb elements and that kind of thing, I would use this, but those situations are probably going to be few and far between. If you were fighting, say, a dragon and the dragon's breathed you, this isn't something that you can't counterspell it. You could use the absorb element spell. So you'd have to consider whether it's worth, whether you'll reduce the damage more by using one of your other defensive options versus using this. So it's another tool in our arsenal, and it's good, but you should plan on using other options that will reduce damage by more if you can. We also get to learn another cantrip here, and you can honestly pick whatever you want. I would probably learn Prestidigitation for more out of combat utility, or maybe Green Flame Blade if you wanted a kind of a cleave option for your melee attacks. We get to add a couple more spells to our book, and I would take the invisibility spells and synaptic static. But honestly, you can pick whatever you want and whatever your favorite is. There are a lot of good spells out there. Invisibility, importantly, when you upcast it, you can target additional creatures. So if we were to cast it with, say, a 5th level spell slot, we could make 4 creatures invisible. This might be our entire party. And Synaptic Static is another one of those spells that does the same damage as a fireball, but it targets an intelligence save, and there's also a debuff effect that goes with it. And this is another one of those spells like Tasha's Mind Whip that does both the damage and has a control effect attached, and we really, really like those. At level 11, we are a 11th level wizard. Our arcane recovery is now 6 levels of slots, and we still can't recover any spells higher than any slots higher than 5th level. But you could, for example, recover a 5th level and a 1st level, or all your 1st levels and a 2nd level, and that kind of thing. The power of our cantrips goes up again here, and we now get 6th level spells and a 6th level spell slot. As for our 2 spells that we get, I would take Chain Lightning and Mass Suggestion. And you can again pick your favorite based on how your campaign is going. But I like Chain Lightning for that really nice AoE blasting, and Mass Suggestion is a concentration-free control option that could potentially end an encounter. At level 12, we are a Wizard 12, and we get our next ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to bump my intelligence here. Although bumping our dexterity would help more with our damage per round in terms of our hit chance and our damage, I like to think of this character again as a caster first, and so improving our spell save DC is going to be more important to me than improving my dexterity. And I believe that Bladesingers are going to be more effective overall in terms of their well-roundedness if you do this. That doesn't mean that bumping your dexterity and being melee first is wrong, and using spells to buff your melee capabilities. But on this character, again, we're going for that well-rounded type of character, and so we're bumping our intelligence for our saves. We also got a couple more spells here. I would take Contingency and Dimension Door. Contingency is a really cool spell. You basically recast this on an earlier day. You specify a trigger and a spell of 5th level or lower, and that spell will trigger when its conditions are met. So you could potentially say, if I am reduced to less than 15 hit points, I cast Dimension Door and teleport myself away, that kind of thing. And we took Dimension Door because it's a really nice long-range teleport, and we could potentially bring it with us. Great tool to have in our arsenal. But again, continue to add more spells to your book as you find them on your adventures. You should probably have way more than the 28 minimum spells in your book at this point. At 13th level, we are Wizard 13. Our Arcane Recovery bumps up to 7 levels of slots, and we get 7th level spells and slots. And the ones I would take here are Force Cage for a very powerful concentration-free control effect, and Simulacrum. Now, Simulacrum is a super duper powerful spell and might not be allowed at most tables. And so when I report damage numbers with it, I will, report the numbers as they would be without the Simulacrum. But what you can do with this is you can basically make a copy of yourself. Copy has half of your hit points. It can't really recover expended spell slots or ever improve. But you can always make a new Simulacrum once the old one is out of spell slots. And so we can basically use this to have a second copy of ourselves running around. Again, can be a little crazy and might be impractical, but the power level of this spell cannot be denied. I've got to take it if allowed. So it is time for our next tactics report here at level 13. What has changed since last time? Well, we've gotten access to 6th and 7th level spells and slots, including Simulacrum and Contingency, as well as Force Cage and the others. We've gained Song of Defense for that situational damage reduction. Our intelligence has increased to 20, and the power of our cantrips has gone up. Now, in terms of our plans, they haven't changed. In the first round, we're going to start our concentration spell, whatever it may be, controlled or damaged round, and we'll start our Blade Song. And then in round 2 and beyond, we'll melee or cast spells as required and shove with our telekinetic. In terms of control, some of our really nice options we have now are Mass Suggestion and Force Cage in terms of our non-concentration options. For blasting, we've got Chain Lightning and Synaptic Static, in addition to things we had before like Fireball. And in terms of utility, we've gained things like Contingency, Dimension Door, and Invisibility. In terms of our damage per round plan, we're going to cast Animate Objects at 7th level, again making those tiny objects. This will add 4 more, so we'll now have 14. We'll start our Blade Song, and then in round 2 and beyond, we'll make attacks with Blade and our second attack. And we'll use our bonus action to command our animated objects, again, probably a fistful of coins, or use our telekinetic feature to shove. Now, our Simulacrum is going to be doing exactly the same thing in terms of our damage calculations. So, our Booming Blade is now at +8 to hit with advantage, thanks to our familiar, and does 1d6 plus 3 piercing damage and 2d8 thunder damage. Our other attack is 1d8, +8 to hit and 1d6 plus 3. We now have 14 of those tiny animated objects attacks with a +8 to hit, doing 1d4 plus 4 damage. And if the target moves after having been hit by Booming Blade, it'll take 3d8 damage. We didn't factor this into our calculations, though. And then all of this is doubled for our simulacrum. So what does this look like? Against a target with an armor class of 10, it would be 222.6 damage per round. And against an enemy with an AC of 17 and plus 7 to their saves, it would be 148.6. Now, without the simulacrum, those numbers are halved, so 111.3 and 74. Now, since last time, this is an increase of 176% against the low armor class, so that's a 2.75 multiplier, and 156% or 2.56 multiplier against higher armor class. Now, without the simulacrum, these are gains of 38% and percent respectively. And even without the simulacrum, we are still doing pretty darn good sustained damage. With it, it is very, very good. Now, at level 14, we are a Wizard 14, and we get the Song of Victory feature. This is a really cool one. While we're blade singing, we get to add our intelligence modifier to our melee damage attacks minimum of 1. So we will get to add an additional +5 to hit, which is great. We also get a couple more spells here, and I would be taking Bigby's Hand and Plane Shift. Now, you might have wanted to get Bigby's Hand earlier. This is a 5th level spell. Basically summons this hand made out of force, and it can punch people and grab them and that kind of thing. And some cool things about this spell, it does force damage, so it's magical, and it scales really well with upcasting. Now, it doesn't actually beat out the damage per round of animated objects against an enemy that is not resistant to non-magical damage. But against an enemy that is resistant to non-magical damage, which is what the animated objects do, you'll want to use this spell instead. And so it's, again, a great thing to have in our arsenal, and it can control and do damage on its own. And Plane Shift, again, pick your favorite, but this is a kind of a nice thing for a high-level wizard to have, and it can be really fun. At level 15, we are a Wizard 15, and we're now up to 8 levels of slots with our Arcane Recovery. Again, this is capped at 5th level slots that you can recover, but you could recover a 5th level slot and a 3rd level slot, for example, or 3 2nd level slots and 2 1st level slots and that kind of thing. We get to add a couple more spells to our book. The ones that I would do here, and kind of how I envision this character going, is I would take the Clone spell and the Demiplane spell. So Clone lets you make potentially a new body for yourself. It matures in 120 days, and if you die, your soul goes back to your clone and you're still alive. And Demiplane lets us basically make a kind of a private plane of our own making that nobody else can get to unless you've seen us cast it and that kind of thing. What you could potentially do here is you could create a demiplane and fill it with clones of not only yourself but all your party members, and put backup things there, like a backup copy of your spell book, backup weapons and armor and that kind of thing. So in case your party does die, well, you just wake up in your demiplane and climb out of your vat and grab your backup equipment. And so we kind of have a plan to be essentially immortal here, and that's something that is kind of cool. And honestly, high-level wizards, once you start to get these 6th, 7th, and 8th level spells, can potentially start to break the game and the world. And that's something that can be, it's very powerful, and doing something like this is worth a discussion with your dungeon master. At level 16, we are a 16th level wizard, and we're going to bump our dexterity by 2 to 18. We get to learn a couple more spells. I would take Feeble Mind to potentially destroy an enemy caster for a very long time, and Teleportation Circle. But you can pick your favorite and whatever you want here. The reason I want the Teleportation Circle is we can potentially put a Teleportation Circle and make it permanent in our demiplane, so we can teleport back there without having to cast the demiplane spell. And it could also enable us to get out easier once we're there, again, without having to spend a spell slot. And yeah, we basically have our own private fortress that is inaccessible in its own private plane of existence, where we have clones and backup equipment and all that kind of stuff. Finally, at 17th level, we are a 17th level wizard. We get 8 levels of slots when we use our Arcane Recovery, and the power of our cantrips goes up. And we can now learn 9th level spells and have a 9th level spell slot. And I would take True Polymorph and Wish here. Wish is super powerful, and if even if you don't do the stuff that's outside of its explicit use, it's still very powerful in that you can replicate any spell of 8th level or lower with a casting time. Well, it only takes one action to cast, regardless of what its original casting time was, and doesn't require any material components. And this spell is super powerful. There's so many things that you can replicate with it, and although but I'm not going to be factoring it into our damage calculations, but it is a very powerful spell, and just something that should be in every wizard's arsenal. And yeah, you're incredibly powerful at this point. So it's time for our last and final tactics report. What has changed since last time? Well, we've gained Song of Victory to add our intelligence modifier to our melee attacks while our Bladesong is active. We bumped our dexterity to 18. The power of our cantrips has gone up. We've gained 8th and 9th level spells and slots, and basically have a plan to be immortal. And as well as we have the very powerful Wish wild card how it went. So our tactics again haven't changed. We're going to use our action in the first round to cast our concentration spell, and our bonus action to start our Bladesong. And then in round 2 and beyond, we will melee or cast non-concentration spells as required and shove with telekinetic. Our damage per round plan here is to cast animate objects at 9th level, the tiny version, and start our Bladesong. Again, importantly, if it's an enemy that is resistant to non-magical damage, you should probably be using Bigby's Hand instead. And then our round 2 plan is to make our booming blade attack with our Familiar's Help, and then make our second attack, and then we'll use our bonus action to command our objects, maybe run our Bigby's Hand, or shove with our telekinetic. And our simulacrum copy of ourselves is going to be doing the exact same thing, so we can double all of our damage. And so our booming blade at this point will have a plus 10 to hit with advantage, doing 1d6 plus 3d8 plus 9 damage. Our second attack will have plus 10 to hit and do 1d6 plus 9. And we would have 18 animated objects if we cast that spell at 9th level. And these would all have a plus 8 to hit, doing 1d4 plus 4 damage. Again, just throw out a fistful of gold coins, and that should work just fine for this. The damage of the moving blade, if the target moves, is up to 4d8. But of course, we get to double all of our damage because we have a simulacrum. So, against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and no bonus to their saves, we would do 306.2 damage per round. And against an enemy with an AC of 17 and plus 7 to their saves, it would be 198. And without the simulacrum, we just have these numbers. So 153.1 against an armor class of 10, or 99.9 against an armor class of 18. That is a copyist error. That is 8 plus 8 saves in particular. Since last time, this is an increase of 38% against the low armor class and 34% against the high armor class, and that's again whether or not you have a simulacrum, because you kind of factor that damage doubling ready. All right, time to summarize. What is the overall score of this character and this build? So to get this, I take all those numbers that are damage reports and I average them into one final score. So that is a 135.2, which is the best of all my damage per round builds, even if, even though I didn't actually design this build primarily for damage per round. That said, it is an 80.5 if we don't include the simulacrum. And this number, while good, is not my number 1 damage per round build if we factor out the simulacrum. It is beaten out by my Herald of Vengeance Paladin build, actually, which is still the king if Simulacrum is off the table. That said, this damage per round is still very good, even without having that clone, that double, and can be very, very powerful. If I was going to take this build to 20, it would obviously be full Wizard 20. There's a lot of really powerful features that Wizards get after level 17, including the ability to cast some of their low-level spells at will. And I would be using our last feat probably to bump our dexterity to T. Importantly, like I talked about throughout this video, the spells that you take should vary based on the campaign that you're in, and you won't be limited to just the spells you get when you level up. So use your downtime and your gold to seek out and purchase spells to fill your spell book and kind of round yourself out in all those areas where you might not have something. On this build in particular, we are a caster first, but we are quite durable thanks to our defensive spells and Bladesong, and we do have some melee ability, which is honestly respectable. The most difficult part of playing this character and this build is going to be your spell preparation and selection. Even though we get to prepare a lot of spells, you're really going to have to adapt to how you expect the adventuring day to go. If you think that you're going to have an adventure underwater, you better prepare, water breathing. Or if you think there's going to be some infiltration, you might want to prepare fly and invisibility and that kind of thing. You also don't necessarily need to prepare, your full arsenal of blasting spells and that kind of thing. But it's always good to have a few of the low level ones prepared. And if you have any rituals, of course, you don't have to prepare those, which is fantastic. And as I said, our go-to damage per round at higher levels is very likely going to be Bigby's Hand, especially when most of the enemies that you might fight at those levels are going to be resistant or even immune to non-magical damage. And so even though that swarm of animated object does pretty well, once the enemies are resistant, Bigby's Hand is going to be a lot better. So overall, this is a well-rounded character for all pillars of play. And importantly, one of the things about a wizard is, if there's a skill check or a social situation, very often there's a spell that will do that. And so even though this character might not be proficient in all of the skills, our ability to use spells to make ourselves or others better can get us out of a lot of situations. Even if you don't have, say, a rogue in the party or someone who's good at lockpicking, your wizard could learn the knock spell, which can just unlock things. And so with the right spells and that kind of thing, you can make a very powerful and very effective character that will be good at just about everything. And this is one of the things that makes wizards so cool. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Bladesinger build. If this build inspired you, let me know in the comments. Is there anything that you would do differently? Anything that I missed? Please let me know. I hope you enjoyed this. My name is Nathan, and I will see you next time.